You're going to have to sit down.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming. This is the closest equivalent to December 7th, 1941 that I could imagine putting together. It's wonderful for you to be willing to come and talk to the members, to your other neighbors and to the members of this community in these difficult times. We hope that the result of this will be ideas for the future of Princeton, all Princetonians, in the spirit that perhaps we started 8 years ago when we met to talk about the development of the parking lots and the library and so forth and the downtown. And those were a series of what-if conversations. They weren't proposals that were fixed. They weren't even the final proposals. But they were what if this, what if that. And the community discussions of that proved to be very valuable and, in fact, finally evolved what we did together. That's the goal for today. Very open community discussion of what is. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Arts Council for being our hosts today. Not only are we in the building, but we're in the institution, and this really was one of the steps along the path toward the downtown neighborhood resolution. There was, as you know, initial disagreement about the size of the building, even its location and so forth. But we managed to have a task force headed by Nicholas Katzenbach, strong participation by the Arts Council leadership, and in particular I would mention Wendy Mager as being outstanding in that respect. And the neighborhood and the Arts Council worked together, came to a reconciliation, and now we're in this wonderful building. I called Mike Graves to see whether he would be willing to join us in the conversation this morning. He responded very quickly, said he'd love to, but he couldn't make it. But it's in that spirit of conversation that we're meeting here in the Arts Council this morning. Also, would like to thank the members of the local governments, the mayors, the members of council, the township committee, members of the planning board who've come and participated with us in this conversation. In particular, we have today Marion Trotman of the borough, Bertie Williams of the Township Committee, Marvin Reed, the head of the chairman of the Master Plan Subcommittee, and I see Kevin Wilkes, the councilman here, others who are, anyway, a lot of Randy Coons is here. Thank you all for joining with us. And also, we have representatives of the university here. Bob Durkee has been a very diligent and strong participant in the forums that we've had. Kristen Appleton, who's the Director of Community Affairs, not only does she come to these meetings, but she comes to the Princeton Future board meetings. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my colleagues on the Council of Princeton Future. This wonderful array of people. We meet once a month. We talk a lot. We listen. And the listening has been, as you can see, in the booklets that are this booklet. Thank you, Julie. For the last 2 years, we have been listening and recording what has been said in those meetings. And today we will be coming back as a result of those. The main purpose of today is, though, to listen to someone from outside, someone who has had an extraordinary career experience in the very questions this community faces. Bob Goldsmith is with us. Bob is a lawyer who specializes in redevelopment. Planning, development, and redevelopment is his field. Within his law firm, he heads up the redevelopment section. And he was, for example, the attorney for the borough, correct me on all this, but he was the attorney for the borough on the redevelopment area. He's been head of the organization downtown New Jersey. Mayor Marvin Reed was the head of it for a 1-year term?
4 years.
4-year term. And he was succeeded by Bob Phillips. Bob has worked on both the public sector side and the private sector side and brings to us a great deal of knowledge. The reason that this is important is that what you can do about a community is really determined, maybe not as too large, but certainly tremendously formed by the municipal land use law. I've come to understand that it's about as thick as a telephone book, and for a layman it's about as interesting as reading the telephone book. But it is the enabling legislation, because all that we do comes from the enabling legislation of the state, and that is then codified in the municipal land use law. Bob also has had experience working with other communities within the state of New Jersey concerning their growth and change and development. Now, the reason it's significant is that although, for example, when we had a discussion of the two plans, the university plan and the community master plan, often people would say, and I was guilty of this, or I did it, I would say, gee, in Philadelphia they're doing this, or in Providence, Rhode Island, they're doing that. And it was stimulating and made me envious, I suppose, in some respects about that. But it turns out that what you can do in each state differs. It is not, if we're going to really make progress, we have to know what it is that is the enabling legislation of the state of New Jersey, what can be done here, now, maybe what we change, but nevertheless, that's the bottom line of it all. So that's why it's very good of Bob to come on to join us, to become part of this continuing conversation. Now, in the newspapers recently, we have run a series of ads of seeking solutions and $1 million houses. Change accelerates, problems persist. And that's the beginning of the today. I think there are 5 kinds of, if you look at the problems that were the result of listening and recording and talking back to it and listening back, it seems to me that there are 5 types of problems. One has to do with the overarching relationship of the town to the town and the town to the gown. Town and town, town and gown. And among the interesting results last year was the overwhelming support for improving town-town relations. Consolidation was a key word, but there are other proposals as well. So town and town relations are one, and town and gown. But it isn't just the university is gown. There's also, as you know, major institutions in this town. The Theological Seminary, Westminster College, the Institute for Advanced Studies, and so forth. And there are other kinds of institutions as well. So the structure of the large issues are that. Then there are 2 very functional issues having to do with housing and traffic and transportation. Those are pervasive, and many of you would get up and speak about one of those with a laser beam of determination about the housing problems and the transportation and parking and traffic problems. Then there are the fundamentals of the economy, having to do with the viability not only of the institutions, of business, of local merchants, but also the viability of the government themselves. So jobs and economy have been rising in importance. In fact, you could make the case that the economy is the driving question, the driving force, and that all else is, in some respects, linked to issues of the economy of the town and the region. Connected to that, of course, are the issues of property taxes, the high property taxes of the state, and the impact of property taxes on individuals and businesses and the future of our community. So that's the third listing of types. The next has to do with very specific physical, geographical sites. That is, the downtown as a district and the neighborhoods as places. We do not have a district plan for the downtown, and we do not have plans for the individual neighborhoods. In that respect, we've been asking for, and we presented recommendations a few years ago for a downtown district plan. We've not made much progress yet with respect to understanding the neighborhoods. In that respect, we are hoping to work on what you might call the Princeton Index, which would be a way of learning about each of the neighborhoods, what's happening in them, their demographic, their people changes, their economy changes, the physical changes, and use the extraordinary ability of the internet to have that information known to all of you, so we can move ahead with more information about what's actually happening in the downtown and in the neighborhoods themselves. If in the best of all possible worlds, we would have evolving and continuing plans at both the downtown as a district and the neighborhoods as such. And the last of the 5 types are the most general. In fact, the ones that got the greatest support and attention, having to do with qualities of the diversity of the community, of the people, the places, the jobs, the housing, the character of the community as a whole, in which diversity is very important, and sustainability. Those two, of course, are linked in biological terms to be more sustainable needs diversity. And the sustainability, which is overwhelmingly now concerned with environmental sustainability, I suggest to you within a few weeks will become more and more concerned with economic sustainability as well as environmental sustainability. In fact, in the work that we've done with the regional plan, there are 3 aspects of sustainability: environmental, economic, and social. And the interaction between those 3 will become at the forefront of discussion. Now, that's where we came as a result of the discussions of the past 2 years. Before we move on, I'd like to open the floor to you, so that if you wish, if you would like to add to this list of problems that you have not, if you want to say, look, that's what you heard, and everyone's guilty of hearing what they want to hear. If that's what you heard, are there problems that we ought to recognize and put on the table before we open up to Bob? Go. I can't believe it. Yes.
I might be getting too specific, and maybe you've already covered this in terms of neighborhoods. But as we all know, there's a problem in the neighborhoods in terms of larger houses going into the neighborhood and changing the whole context of the neighborhood.
That is in fact covered. Yes, having to do with the character thing. That's absolutely right.
So you're looking for new problems.
Problems which we haven't identified in these. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Ron Nielsen. I distributed this alternative view. I think you have to consider the effect of peak oil and the fact that
the effect of what?
Peak oil, and the fact that everything we do is going to be affected by that in the next few years. Any grandiose plans you might have to do any changes.
Doesn't that come under sustainability?
Not really, because sustainability, I think, is a fraud.
Oh, it's what?
It's a fraud.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Yes.
relationships and interdependencies with surrounding communities within a 10-mile radius, like the one that I live in.
Okay, that's a fair point. Yes, I'll agree with that. That's a fair point. I mean, these are all things generated by the discussions of the borough, township, and the relationships. It may have been implied, but you're right, it's not explicit. Okay, Larry, good. I enjoy when the graduates of the school make such good points. Thank you, Larry. Yes, Mark?
Yes. I just want to rise to commend Ron Nielsen for passing out the paper that he did. There are one or two points that I don't agree with him on, but by and large, since I was the one that suggested to him that he look at James Kunstler's book, if you read it, you might not come to as dire a conclusion as he did. But if you ever wondered why we preserve farms and green space around our downtown, I think Ron's paper really tells you that if you're not growing lettuce now, you probably will be in the next 3 or 4 years. And what we hear today as sustainability doesn't begin to be the kinds of things we're going to have to consider, and that what we're going to have to do in terms of why we're preserving our downtown is inherent in what Ron says in this memo.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Any other questions? Questions about problems? Okay. Okay. If not, we will proceed as corrected.
I'm sorry, I will have one.
Okay, go ahead.
There are a lot of international people coming to this city, and there is nothing international, no place to meet, no place to discuss. Besides restaurants, this city is still very it's very provincial, and I guess something when you, in your definition of downtown, maybe something like that needs to be included. I'm not sure if this center could be a cultural center, not just an art center. But that's my point. Thank you.
How would you phrase that as a problem?
It is a problem in many cities of the United States.
No, I mean, what's the problem?
A cultural center for the people to meet.
Okay. Should there be culture? Should there be recognition?
A social culture.
Social, right. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, anyway, not that. That's fine. Okay. Well, in the spirit of the what is, coming out of these discussions, we posed to Bob Goldsmith these questions and suggested that perhaps there were 3 new tools that might be useful to us as a community. Might be, and they are not necessarily in opposition to each other. They may be cumulative. There might be new tools that we might avail ourselves of in order to deal with the kinds of problems that we've been discussing. And those will be discussed initially by Bob. He'll open the floor to questions at the end of the presentation of each of these 3 tools. Then we'll have a coffee break, come back, and continue the discussion with him and amongst ourselves on it. Again, the purpose of today is to get knowledge, to understand what the possibilities are within the legislation, within the enabling laws, and also with the experience that Bob has had in other places in New Jersey from which we can learn. So it's a pleasure to welcome Bob Goldsmith.
Good morning, people. I hope you'll still be applauding after. Bob's a tough act to follow. I'm going to present you with some concepts. They're not intended to be be-all, cure-alls, but there's some ideas. And the reality is that we work within the governmental structure established by the state legislature. So that gives us some advantages, some tools, but also some limitations. So this is Bob's suggestion. And it's good questions. And some journalists out there, I guess, know expression of journalism 101. You've got a great town. And go right ahead. I would sit there too if I could. And does anyone know what an expert is?
Can I get through?
It's someone from out of town. I live in Morristown. Technically, I live in Morris Township. My heart is in Morristown. It's probably a similar demographic to Morristown and Morris Township, Princeton and Princeton Township. And if you don't know it, one distinct similarity, if someone has a business within 30 miles of Morristown, they want to have a Morristown mailing address. And if someone has a business within 30 miles of Princeton, they want to have a Princeton mailing address. So it's probably one of the most notable places, certainly in the United States and probably in the world. And that's just a great picture of Princeton. I take pictures all the time. I was just in Europe 2 weeks ago. I took 3,600 pictures. My wife thought I was crazy, but digital makes it easy. Solutions. My experience, I've been practicing law for frighteningly 31 years now. And a developer client of mine about 3 years ago paid me a meaningful compliment. He said, "You're the only lawyer I know that could actually be a developer." Because I do try to look at the big picture and what the reality is of making things happen, not being the traffic cop that says what you can't do. My philosophy is to really push the envelope. When we're going outside the envelope, I let people know that. But I want to enable constructive change rather than block it. Solutions, the most significant solution is leadership. I guess some people may like the Princeton redevelopment project, some people may not. I don't know if I have a slide up here of Abraham Lincoln. If I don't, I'll tell you about that later. But Marvin Reed was the mayor at the time, and I have to say that Marvin exhibited remarkable leadership to bring about a project with the support of the governing body of Princeton. And in other communities, those kind of efforts have failed. I think it's been a great benefit to the community. I think if you can take a surface parking lot and, among other things, create a 15,000 square foot public plaza that people utilize on a routine basis is a great thing. Courage goes with leadership, vision and open-mindedness, being willing to hear, and